Mr. Kimball, taking off from the video that I showed everybody, Oklahoma had given the farm a medical marijuana license. The application for the license fraudulently stated that the operation was 75% owned by Oklahoma resident as required by state law. Instead, the marijuana farm was run by an ex-convict reportedly awaiting trial for a separate shooting incident. This isn't an isolated occurrence. Oklahoma law enforcement has shut down more than 800 marijuana farms in the last 2 years for operating illegally. So my question, given history like I just stated, does the fact that a state, any state licensed marijuana farm mean that the farm isn't generating illegal proceeds?
Sir, thank you for the question. We're frequently seeing, we've identified in 23 states that Chinese organizations have taken over the cultivation of marijuana. Some of those are legitimate, some of those are illegitimate. The vast majority that we find in working with our state and local counterparts are illegitimate. That means that some of the properties are bought with third-party actors, but the people working in those facilities and cultivating those facilities are controlled and work at the behest of Chinese money laundering organizations and marijuana growers organizations. We found this is a significant problem, and it goes from the California all the way across the country into the Northeast, and it's becoming a serious challenge that we all are looking to do more to stop the problem as it's ongoing.
So a state-approved farm can generate illegal proceeds, right?
It can, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chester, at an October Drug Caucus hearing, I asked the State Department for a briefing before the U.S. lifted sanctions on China to secure fentanyl cooperation. I never got that briefing. In November, the Biden administration lifted sanctions. This month, the House China Select Committee issued a report finding the Chinese government publicly subsidizes the export of fentanyl and knockoffs. This graph that you see is one of several subsidies that they found. Given these findings, it seems irresponsible to appease China with relaxed sanctions. My staff received an email that you are at this hearing, quote, representing the White House. So this legitimate question, was the Biden administration aware of this illicit narcotic subsidy program before it made concessions to the Chinese government?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. I'll answer this in a couple of ways. The first one is, with the help of the intelligence community, the administration has what we consider to be a very good picture on what is and is not the role of the Chinese government in the flow of precursors and fentanyl into the United States, and has for an extended period of time. I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, it is critically important that we engage the government of the PRC in helping us to be able to deal with this, because they are criminal elements within China, the preponderant support part of the problem. And so our engagement with the PRC is not designed to paper over or sugarcoat anything. It's designed to engage a country that can do the most to help solve this problem with our understanding of what their role is in it.
So our government was aware of the illicit narcotic subsidy program before it made concessions to the Chinese government?
Senator, please understand, in a public forum, I really would not like to get into what we do and do not know about the Chinese government. What I will say about this report, though, is that we appreciate the committee putting it out. I think it's all part of the broader discussion that we have with the PRC, and a part of the picture of what the PRC's role is in this, and an element of our engagement with the country overall.
Okay. Mr. Kimball, I'm still waiting for a DEA to respond to my questions for the record from October 2023 Drug Caucus hearing. Homeland Security Investigation gave us their report on April the 19th. Can you get us a response to our request?
Yes, sir, I'll track it down and get a response.
Okay, thank you. In December, President Biden released the prolific money launderer Alex Saab to Venezuela as part of a deal cut with narcotic terrorists and President Nicolas Maduro. Was the DEA consulted before the Biden administration released Alexander Saab? And the case against Saab now is, of course, foreclosed because he was fully pardoned. When will you release the investigative file?
Sir, thank you for the question. Sir, we were not consoled before before he was released. I will have to check the status of the investigative file. I'm not sure exactly what the status of that file is at this point in time. Well, I can find out and get back with you.
Well, even though, please do that, but there wouldn't be any reason we wouldn't be able to see the investigative file, right? Or wrong?
If I would have to check the status. I do not know if it's open or closed at this point in time.
Okay. Mr. Nelson, after Secretary Yellen's meeting with Chinese officials in Beijing at the beginning of the month, she remarked that the U.S. and China will share best practices and information to clamp down on loopholes in our respective financial systems. What sort of information does the U.S. government plan to share with China?
So following Secretary Yellen's trip to China, where she and her counterparts had a direct series of engagements around our respective illicit finance challenges, a group met here in Washington, D.C. just a couple of weeks ago and specifically identified illicit finance moving to virtual assets as an area of particular shared concern, also looking at our respective capacity to understand transparency within our corporate formation system and our implementation of our beneficial ownership authorities. They talked about relatively specific challenges like pig butchering, which is a form of a scam in order to sort of generate funds in a relationship with trust before the scam artist steals from the victim. And then we also had an opportunity to talk about regulation of financial technology. But the idea is really to set an agenda in these regular meetings and then obviously continue to build on the prior conversations while identifying issues of shared concern moving forward. And specifically in the context of it's not just issues where we both are worried about, but to the extent that Secretary Yellen has led conversations directly about our deep concerns about China's role in facilitating the trafficking of fentanyl and other synthetic narcotics. It is a dynamic where they may have concerns that aren't our concerns, but we are expressing directly with them concerns that we perceive emanating from their system.
For you as well, did the Chinese government disclose its illicit narcotic subsidy program to any American official during discussions about enhanced cooperation?
That I don't know. I'd have to come back.
Does the Treasury Department plan to raise China's illicit narcotic subsidy program in future talks with China?
Again, don't know about that specific program, but again, we are looking closely at the report and then happy to have a follow-on conversation in a confidential or classified space.
Yeah. To Mr. Merrill, since 2020, auditors have been calling on HSI to do more to counter money laundering. In 2020, Government Accountability Office report mentions that HSI does not have a clear guide on how best to operate its trade transparency unit, which counters trade-based money laundering. Further, the Office of Inspector General's report said that HSI does not retain expertise to combat these schemes. My last question is, what is HSI doing to improve its trade-based money laundering operations?
Thank you, Senator, for your question. Trade transparency, the trade transparency units is part of the foundation of the creation of the Cross-Border Financial Crime Center. Trade-based money laundering is probably the most used form of money laundering by transnational criminal organizations. The way that we are addressing the findings of the GAO audit are twofold. We are first automating our system, our computer system. We relied on software that was, to put it mildly, a bit clunky and require manual entries and manual searches. We have come up with a plan to make a lot of the functions automated. We have also requested budgetary enhancements to create more positions for our trade transparency unit. But in the meantime, to address the personnel staffing shortages that we currently have, we have merged our trade transparency unit with our bulk cash smuggling center to create the Cross-Border Financial Crime Center. That way, we can cross-train our personnel on trade-based money laundering and customs fraud violations, which are part of the trade transparency unit findings that we have uncovered over the years. Like I said, trade is the main way in which transnational organized crimes launder their proceeds. So we have to make sure that employees are not only trained on the latest techniques, but also trained on customs fraud violations that a lot of times are the violations that uncover that trade fraud that is being committed.